Hello, it's Judy. I'm at Morgan Bay. I'm at my parents' place. And I've had the privilege of meeting one of my dad's guests, Wendy. And Wendy has shared with me such an amazing story. It gave me goosebumps. And I just really want to share it with all my parents out there. And to say to you that always have hope and believe that great things are possible. And for the ICU moms trying to get breast milk, for the parents who've perhaps maybe lost a child, for parents struggling to fall pregnant, we need to have hope in this new year of 2021. And I just want to thank Wendy and her son Jared for sharing with me this afternoon. And have a lovely day from the Eastern Cape, South Africa. And here's Wendy. Bye.
Hello everybody. This is such a privilege for me to have met Judy and to have the opportunity to share with you an amazing experience that happened. It's now 32 years ago. But at the time, I was pregnant and I lived on a farm. And I woke up one morning and to my absolute horror, I discovered that my waters had broken. My gynae rushed me through to, for those of you who know, the HF Verwoerd Hospital in Pretoria, because he said to me, that has the best pediatric intensive care. I, at the time, was 5.5 months pregnant. I spent 6 days in the hospital, and then one day the gynae came and he said to me, Wendy, I'm afraid you have an infection in your amniotic fluid and you have to have your baby. So I wasn't quite ready to give birth. And I said, please, can I rather have an epidural? And while I was being prepared for this epidural, I heard the senior sister say to the junior sisters, this is a case of an inevitable abortion. And I thought, what? It had never entered my mind that my baby wouldn't be fine. And I said to her, how on earth can you say such a thing? And she said, well, you know, Wendy, medically speaking, a child of 28 weeks and over has a chance to survive. But as your child is only 24 weeks, it's unable to breathe, and it is termed an inevitable abortion. Well, I have to be honest. It was beyond me. I couldn't accept that. At 9:30 that night, I was ready to give birth. The gynae came in, and the first thing that he said to me was, I'm terribly sorry, Wendy, but I have to ask you, do you want to have a funeral or don't you? And I said, no, thanks. I don't want to have a funeral, but I do want to see the baby when it's born. When this little baby was born, he made the tiniest little peep. It was like a little chicken. And then he died. He was unable to breathe. The sister came, she wrapped him in a blanket, gave him to me, and I looked at him. I have to tell you, I have never seen a dead body. And for me, it was the most horrific thing I had ever seen. It was like an empty shell, just completely empty. I gave the baby to my husband, who looked at the gynae and said, aren't you going to do something? And the gynae just shook his head. Because the HF Verwoerd is a pediatric, is a teaching hospital, they had everybody present, the neurosurgeon, the pediatricians, the intensive care staff, and they had then took the child, they measured it with the APGAR score, and he measured around 0. Nothing in his body worked. The sister then came back to me and she said, Wendy, do you want to see your baby again? And I said, no, thanks. And they took him out. They then took my husband and I and put us in a little room. And I have to tell you, we were absolutely heartbroken. And we just clung to each other and we wept and we wept and we wept. And, you know, in grief, you can't really think properly. But somewhere in the midst of this, we began to pray. And I never thought about what I prayed. I just literally, I said, God, just as Abraham gave Isaac to you, so too I give this little baby to you. And you know, there was such a peace that came down upon my husband and I. We stopped crying and we made some decisions. It was now 11 o'clock at night and my husband had to go and tell our family that our baby had been born, that he died. And so he left the hospital and I literally lay down in my pillows and I went to sleep. I had such an amazing peace. However, 4 o'clock in the morning, I woke up with a sense of something absolutely terrible that had happened. And as I realized that my baby had died, I began to weep and I absolutely sobbed. But somewhere, yet again, I remembered, Jesus, you are the comforter. And I just called out, I said, Jesus, comfort me. And I felt like I was just hugged. I had this peace, and I'm lying in my bed, and all of a sudden I became aware of somebody in my room. And here was the sister who had taken the baby the night before, the midwife. And she was standing as stiff as a ramrod, just staring at me. And she said to me, Wendy, how are you? And I said, I'm fine, thank you. And she said, well, I have to talk to you. And she pulled a chair up and she sat down next to my bed. And she said to me, you know your baby died last night? I said, yes. You know he stopped breathing? I said, yes. You know, I took him out and I put him in the sluice room. And I said, well, what's a sluice room? And she told me. But I'm a social worker. And I thought this lady is doing reality therapy on me because she thinks I've denied the death of my child. But the next thing she said to me was, your baby was found pink and breathing. And I took him to the intensive care. And I was waiting for her to say to me, and then he died. But instead, she said, would you like to go and see him? So the truth is that when I arrived in the intensive care, some 15 minutes later, here was this little 600-gram baby lying on a little mattress on his back, kicking his legs in the air, with the most beautiful, rich color. When I had seen him the night before, he was blue because he had no oxygen in his body. And here he was with this rich, healthy color. And as I stood there, I just knew that this life was in God's hands. And the sister in charge of the intensive care said to me, Wendy, I'm sorry. We cannot prolong life artificially under a certain age and under a certain weight. And your child neither qualifies in weight or age. So we have to wait for permission from the head of the intensive care to be able to put him in an incubator. Some 2 hours later, when the pediatrician arrived, and he came and he ruffled his little bit of black hair, I have to say that his eyes were still sealed like a puppy's. His little mouth was tiny. And the only reason that I knew that he was even crying was because that tiny little mouth was open. He sounded like a little kitten. The pediatrician came, he tested all his reflex actions, and he finally said, Sister, he has made his mind up for us. Would you put him in the incubator? And then he looked at us and he said, listen, you must have no hope. He's got less than 10% of a chance to survive, and he's got 95% chance of brain damage. This little baby was 24 weeks and he weighed 620 grams. He didn't need a ventilator. The only thing they did was they attached a nose to stomach tube. And I have to tell you that as a mother, it is so ingrained in you to want to do everything possible for your child. And I knew that one of the few things that I could help my baby with was my own breast milk, because that is what God created for a newborn baby to be sustained by. So right there, we started on day one expressing my milk. I was, of course, a bit stressed. It was early for me, so they gave me some medication that did release my milk. But I then started a process of expressing breast milk. And this little baby, his name is Jared, he started drinking 1 milliliter every hour of breast milk, and it went through the nose into the stomach. And Jared was in intensive care for 3.5 months, and he literally went from strength to strength. That which the doctor told us never came to pass. He is neither brain damaged, he's neither physically damaged, he has a normal life, and I cannot only attribute it to breast milk, but I do have to say that that was the only thing that Jared was fed the entire 3.5 months that he was in the intensive care. Just from a spiritual point of view, I have to say that it was such an enormous experience for me. Can you imagine having spent an entire night believing that your child is dead, and then the next morning being told that he is now alive? Was almost too big for me to be able to accept. My poor husband, when we actually phoned him and said to him, you must come to the hospital because your son is alive, he simply said, look, I've been through enough trauma. I don't need any more trauma, and you have made a mistake. So tell my wife I'm coming later. But when he arrived at the hospital and he stood there and he saw this little child, we were completely and utterly overwhelmed by just the presence of the Lord. And what both of us realized was that when Jesus was on the earth, he gave life to the dead. And he is the same yesterday, today, and forever. And here is the proof of a modern miracle. A young man now, 32 years old, who lived a completely normal life, matriculated with distinctions, went to UCT University, did a postgrad business degree, and now runs a business very successfully with very small beginnings. And I have to say that if we follow the ways of God, it is a way that brings life, and that breast milk is a provision from God for children, and there isn't a substitute for God's ways.
Thank you, Wens. Isn't that just such an amazing story about life and the struggles that a lot of moms and parents experience, especially the moms in ICU. And Jared's actually here. He's upstairs, but we're going to call him because I think it's always just amazing to see the babies. I've nursed a lot of 25-weeker babies, and we've obviously always really encouraged those moms to breastfeed and to express, and that's a big part of my practice. Breast milk comes in various shapes and sizes, and obviously it's a journey, and it's a hard journey, but it's to say to the parents that you need support. And there are many lactation consultants in South Africa, overseas, and they all do such amazing work for the community. My dream is for South Africa to become a breastfeeder nation where all parents, families, mothers, communities, irrespective of their education, their faith, their financial status, will get amazing support and guidance to give their babies breast milk, whether it's expressed, whether it's donor milk, but for families to feel supported along this journey, because we know that the human brain grows beautifully on breast milk as a medium. And for South Africa to move onwards and upwards, we need our children to be strong. I had a friend that mentioned one of his businessmen friends was out in South Africa and said, this indeed is God's country, because it's such a beautiful, South Africa with its vast landscapes is so beautiful. And I really believe that my hope and prayer is that I will be able to go into different areas through the country with the help of other consultants in South Africa. We're all there. We all have a goal to share our work. And this year, 2021, I'm going to be starting a startup in Alexander in Johannesburg. And I'm hoping to do a bit of work in Kimberley. And I'm hoping to work through South Africa. And yeah, Wendy and Jared are coming down now, and the proof will be to share and to say that there's hope, and in the times of despair. Yeah, so here's Jared. Thanks. Hi, Jared. Can you hold my selfie stick?
Yeah, with pleasure.
Oh, okay. So
yeah, I've got no idea what you want here.
This is Jared. This is Wendy's son. And Jared, yeah, I just wanted you maybe just to share. Obviously, you were tiny when you came into this world, and now you're a strapping, tall young man. And yeah, I just wanted to know, like, how was school? I'm sure you're like any other kid, because I think, like, having worked with a lot of parents in ICU, the biggest question that parents will ask is my child going to be normal? And a lot of doctors often, I feel, play, you know, maybe they're not sure, so you never know. You never quite know what to say. But I think it's always just great for parents to have hope, and to know that miracles do happen, and that just to take things one day at a time. Tell us, how was your school? I think you went to UCT like me. Yeah, what are you up to, if you don't mind sharing a little bit, just with my parents?
Yeah. All right, should I just speak straight to camera? Yeah. Okay.
Thanks.
Are you obviously going to edit?
Yes.
Could I ask you to ask me the question? It'll actually be easier for me to...
Sure, I'll edit it, sure.
It'll be easier if you ask me questions to answer them. Yeah.
Sure. How was your childhood, your schooling, and... Yeah.
Okay. I had a wonderful childhood. Grew up on a game farm, which I think is one of the best places you can grow up. Lots of activity, lots of sports. School was great. Traveled quite a lot during high school, and I studied one of my passions, which is photography and media at UCT. I think student period of your life is a really special time. Made a lot of great friends, really enjoyed what I studied. Subsequently, I've lived in 2 or 3 countries. Wow. Afterwards, done a bit of a variety of work, and then came back from Italy to South Africa 2 years ago. And I've been living here ever since in Durban. I work as operations manager for a business that collects and recycles hydrocarbons. And life is a special, valuable thing that we should cherish every moment of. I'm really grateful to be able to look back on my life and be able to do that with great ease.
And can I ask, have you had any health problems or chest problems or?
No. I'm really healthy. I'm a very active person. I love tennis. I enjoy swimming. My favorite form of exercise is boxing. It's great mental exercise as well. So no, I'm fortunate to have lived a really healthy life.
Oh wow! Okay, I want your mom. Can you go in for a picture? Okay. Okay. So this is mom and son, and thank you for sharing your story. I know it's obviously a personal story, but I really felt that parents need to know that there's hope, and in the moment it often seems very overwhelming, but just to really hold yourself and be kind. I think that's the biggest thing I say to people, is to be kind. And thank you both. It's been wonderful to meet you both.
Thank you so much.
I was meant to meet you at the start of 2021.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, and I just really encourage you to have hope and to have faith, and that maybe our story can be an encouragement to any of you. And thank you so much, Jude, just for this opportunity.
Yeah.
It was very special. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.